Hello and welcome to episode 36 of the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by the founder of Two Beers Deep, Luke Barrow. Luke, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. How are you doing today?
Yes, very good, thank you. It's good to be on. Thanks for having me on.
Amazing. And I'll start the podcast where I always start the podcast. Luke, in your own words, what makes you a man?
Good question. What makes me a man? I think this has evolved really for me, especially over a certain amount of time. I was brought up in as a I had a strong father figure, and competition and sport was what defined me in my early years, I guess. And that's kind of shifted for me now, and the definition of a man to me now means a lot more, and a lot more, I guess, has a lot more depth to it than what it meant to me back then. So I guess my short answer, not to go on too long about that journey, I'm sure we'll kick into that, but I guess having vulnerability, being open, and having confidence in your weaknesses is for me what makes a man.
It's nice that you've said that it's changed as well, which is one of the reasons that I asked that question, because I think it's something that we should ask ourselves regularly because it's important and it does change. So Luke, why don't you tell us a little bit about Two Pints Deep and what it is?
Yeah, so Two Pints Deep, we're a men's mental health and suicide prevention community that are approaching our charitable status in the coming weeks, which is really, really exciting. And where we aim to sit is increasing that accessibility to the amazing support groups that already exist around the country, and also helping creating safe spaces for I guess support groups that don't quite exist yet, that people need, and understanding that sometimes men, I guess, don't really want solutions right away. They just want to be heard. And that's where kind of we sit as that space in between the problem and the solutions, signposting in the direction of all the good work that a lot of charities and a lot of support groups, a lot of community groups do, but also accepting that there are men that at the moment aren't quite switched on to their own mental health and don't really know how to access this type of support or access these types of conversations with the communities and the people that they're surrounded with at the moment. So raising awareness in that space, I guess the bottom 75% of those that currently access mental health support, and really working in the grassroots of getting men away from or acknowledging that some men may go into spaces that they do drink or potentially do have habits that aren't stereotypically something that benefits your mental health, but they feel comfortable there. They feel part of a community. So it's not removing them from those situations, but it's teaching them about mental health where they already feel comfortable, and it may be in those situations. So I guess, that gives you a sort of brief overview of that.
Yeah, nice. We had a chat before we started recording this, and this is like quite a full circle podcast for me. My partner at the time, when I was going through my sort of initial battles, was like, "Have you seen this?" Showed me this Instagram, relatively new Instagram, and it was you guys, and I sort of looked into it, and it's really interesting looking back at my journey now, and you saying how it's that starting point is just talking and not thinking about solutions. And that's literally how this all started. The whole podcast was designed around men talking. And now I'm sort of looking at that solution base. So I'm sort of a poster boy, if you like, of that talking is really useful to start with, and then sort of looking at that. So really, yeah, it's really great what you're doing. And it's fun that it's sort of come full circle for me in a sense as well. Now, everyone in this space always has a story. So it would be great to sort of get an understanding of why you started this and why you thought it would be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might give you, the listeners, a bit of context as to why we're called Two Pints Deep as well, because it's a interesting name. So 5 years ago, I was living and playing football, semi-professional football over in Australia. I was living through a period of what I look back on now as the best period of my life. It was, I was playing football, being paid really well, really enjoyed the people I was playing with, had a job on the side at an international software company, and was living with mates on the beach in Australia. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. For everything that I dreamed up until that moment, that's exactly what I wanted to do, go and play football abroad and be around friends and live in the warmth. But back at home, my mum was battling cancer and had been for the previous 2.5 years. Something she'd beaten once. I'd come back as she was battling again to sort of help out around the house, and then she was always adamant that she wanted me to go out there and do my thing during this period, and that was giving her drive and hope and the strength to fight what she was going through. But I received a call in late July 2019 it was, from my dad, who said, we've had the recent scan results, things aren't looking good, the cancer spread, you're going to need to come home. So it was the next flight home for me, and a 26-hour journey of my own thoughts. And I guess that was the start of my mental health journey, or what I knew of it. I was anxious about coming home. I was worried about what I was going to come into. I was almost preparing myself for the worst, because that's what I was told. Came back, had a week with my mum, and unfortunately we lost her. And my life in a week flipped upside down. I went from living my best life to living what felt like within a horror movie, I guess, and my worst life, with living with my dad, who was grieving in our family home, where we had so many memories with mum that I'd not been in and around to see the sort of journey of it the past 2 years. And it was kind of a real hit in the face going back into that environment. And I really suffered, and I didn't know how to deal with those feelings. I'd never been through that type of thing before. And I went into protective mode and I had a proper man thought of, right, I need to look after other people. Doesn't worry about my stuff. Let's look after other people. So my dad was my priority. I wanted to make sure he was all right. And I pushed everything that I was going to down and locked it away and thought, I'll deal with that later. Obviously, later never comes. And for the next 6 to 9 months, I suffered a lot with depression. I couldn't go. I really struggled through those those periods of loss and the stages of loss. Struggled alone through them. I had a lot of social anxiety. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to speak to mates because I didn't want them to ask how I was, because I didn't know how I'd physically or emotionally react to that question. I really struggled, and this is a strange one, because I actually did the eulogy at my mum's funeral, and I was fine through it. I played a character, and I just got through reading the words. But then I couldn't say the words that my mum had passed away for the next 6 months. Those words could not come out my mouth. And I went through a lot. I went through gambling issues. That was something that I did to take myself away from this current moment. It was dead easy. I just downloaded an app and it was just consistent. And that all contributed to my overall mental health really going into a spiral and declining. And no one knew about it. And I only started really talking about this stuff, and I had a real breakthrough moment at a mate's party after a couple of drinks. That was my way in. I felt more confident. It was a safe space. I felt like the people that I was speaking to who'd also had a couple of drinks weren't going to give me solutions right away. They were just going to listen, which was massively important for where I was at that time. And from that conversation and those conversations, I found out a lot more about my friends that I didn't even realize that they'd been going through over the last sort of few years. And it scared me that our friendship was so surface level, that I didn't actually know what was going on. And it scared me that if I was to lose a friend, which can happen so often, with the current statistics being how they are, it would kill me if I didn't know that this was going on. And it really made me question what the whole concept of friendship was, and why as a man I wasn't able, and we weren't asking the right questions. So I wanted to create something from that. And over the next sort of year, I tried to come up with a name that was snappy and something that really meant something to me. And I ended up looking back and thinking, what did we all have in common during the times that we were most vulnerable, and the times that we felt most confident, and the times we felt part of a team? And it was the fact that we were 2 pints deep. And I posted it, and it was relatable to a lot of lads and relatable to a lot of people, not just guys, that a lot more does come out during that period. So, I mean, our ethos is to recreate that confidence, recreate that safe space, recreate that feeling of that things won't come back and bite you on the arse if you're going to say something, but recreate it without the need in the end for those 2 pints.
Yeah, it's well, thanks for sharing. It's always good to hear other people's stories, and again, one of the reasons that I do this is people can share stories and hopefully draw some parallels from it and realize that there's other sides to this, and it's great that you've gone on and built this. What do you think is innate in men that we have this, like you use the word character in that story? I think we have that with our friends as well. You talked about statistics. There's other stuff about men not having one close friend, a large proportion of men not having one close friend. Why do you think that a lot of men go through life with surface level friendships with other men?
Ease. I think to get to those depths, I think men feel a lot of responsibility, and stereotypically they have, in terms of the role that they used to play. I don't think they have to play it anymore, but there's still the barriers up that we do in terms of breadwinner, in terms of being the head of a family. And that's roles that we take on without accepting. It's just kind of expected, I guess, or we believe it is. Obviously, there's a shift in that now, which is brilliant, but I still believe that we have the barriers up and the stigmas up to not allow us to go with that shift. And it's easy. We're proud creatures, and adding vulnerability into conversations that some people still see as weaknesses is scary for a lot of men. And that provides that's where we get to with surface level conversations. And I don't think, apart from the pubs, maybe, that we actually give ourselves space to have these conversations. We don't have enough opportunities to be able to have them. With men, there's always something we're doing. There's always something we're playing. There's always something we're watching. It's never just space and time. I always look back and use a stereotype during the presentations that I do on myself and my sisters, and the difference between our sleepovers when we were younger. Us lads would play video games. We'd play hide and seek in the garden. We'd play football in the garden, or we'd watch films, or we'd go on the computer. No conversation whatsoever. And, well, there'd be conversation, but it'd be about the thing that you're doing, right? They'd be like, oh, good goal, or like, what's for tea? And then there'd be a difference in when I came back, and I was like, oh, Leah, what did you do at your sleepover? She was like, oh, we stayed up all night talking. I was like, what do you mean? What do you talk about? And she'd say, oh, well, we talked about the 5 guys at school that we fancy the most. And we said the 5 things that we like about each other. And then we said our 5 favorite pop stars. And we said, and then I always used to think, oh, that sounds boring. But what they're doing there is building skills to be able to have conversations. And those little things and those little time and building and the periods of time have then contributed to them. When they do have conversations, there's depth rather than just surface level. And I think that's where we are miles behind in terms of difference in genders and why men sometimes struggle to have those deep conversations.
Yeah, I think the vulnerability is a big thing. It's that letting your guard down. But I guess so for me personally, that vulnerability it's usually met with advice, and you say that isn't necessarily the time for that advice. So what do you say to the person receiving that conversation when someone sort of decides to open up? Because I think I think men have got to a stage where they can talk, but we maybe can't listen and act on it. So what's the sort of advice on that side of things?
Yeah, and I was having a conversation with someone yesterday about this, and it's all well and good providing the space to talk, but if the person isn't there to receive it, as you just said, it becomes difficult, and the person talking then is put off doing it again. And it's so important, that listening factor. And I think sometimes we're scared to put ourselves in the position where we are the listener because we don't have the answers. But I think if my advice in that area is to acknowledge that you don't have the answers, say, listen, I'm here as an ear. I don't know. I don't really know what we can do, or I don't have the answer to this, but I want you to know that I'm here and I'm listening. And there's certain things that now I think become habitual to us when we are in conversations that we need to be, when we're having these difficult conversations, we need to be more aware of. One of those is focus. We need to make sure that we're focusing on what people are saying, but also showing them the signs that we are focusing, whether it's putting your phone in your pocket, whether it's turning your phone over. It shows them that you are giving them your attention during that difficult conversation that they're about to unload. Another one is saying it back to them and having it. That's a really, really good way of being like, you know what, I've understood you here and I've heard you. Let me almost repeat it back to you. And a big one, I think, for this one is having patience within these conversations. And it's something as a now generation that we may struggle with. And it's understanding that the answer that we want or the answer that this person needs may not be the first conversation or found within that first conversation, maybe the second, third, fourth, and fifth. And having patience with breaking these barriers down and listening and understanding that. So they're the three main things of I think are really important to be able to be present within those conversations, and if you can, having that vulnerability to say it back and show your emotion too provides that platform and that level for you both to be able to have a connection. Even if I think men need to get a lot better at this, of showing our emotion, even if we're happy, we're sad, we're scared, we're excited, we need to start talking about those emotions and getting the habits of doing, because I think that's an area that we really struggle at the moment.
That's really nice, actually. That's something I don't think has been said on this podcast, which is essentially sharing all emotions. Why is this need to talk have to be negative and have to be about bad things? Like, if you want to talk about something that your kid did at school or something you did at work that's made you proud or happy, then share that with your friends. Like, if you can't share that with your friends, who can you share that with? So that's really different and really nice to hear. So yeah, thanks for that one, Nick. That's a good one. So me and you right now, we're in a really privileged position. We're having this conversation. We're having an open conversation. And you talk about two pints deep wanting to sort of be grassroots. So how do you try and reach people that might not necessarily have even thought about having a conversation like this?
I think our aim is to be different to a lot of the other mental health communities, mental health charities that are solution focused in what they do. And what I mean by that is, I love Andy's Man Club. I think they're brilliant and they're providing that network all around the UK, which is invaluable. But there's a certain part and there's a certain group of men that just won't go because it's too intimidating to go to a group session and that be the starting point. I believe there needs to be a whole safety net and a whole platform before we get to that. So we will do all we can to promote the work that they do. But going into one of those situations, you'd be immediately uncomfortable. It's a different situation for you. It's a different environment that you've ever been in before. You'd be anxious about going. I would be anxious about going. And I've done that type of stuff before. So in order to get a message across and actually infiltrate having these conversations and opening up, we really want to focus the work that we do and the content that we produce in areas that men already feel comfortable. They're already at home. That's where they become themselves. Is it when they go to the football with their mate? Is that where they feel most comfortable? Is it at the bowls club and they've got a group of guys that they go and do there? Is it at the pub, at the local pub, and that's where they really come alive? They already feel comfortable. Is it the cricket club where they go down and on a Saturday they're watching everyone? What are the areas that men already feel comfortable, and how can we use that? Because then we're not taking anything away from their lives. I think mental health and a mental health journey is often seen as, God, I've got to get up in the morning. You've got to get up before 6 a.m. You've got to go and exercise for an hour. You've got to fit that all in whilst going to a full-time job, having the stresses and strains of that. Oh, and how am I going to fit my ice bath in? That's supposed to be really good for your mental health. And God, I've forgotten to do yoga today. And it's just all this well-being is so far away from so many men. And what we need is to provide platforms and provide a bit of a movement, I think, that says we're not asking you to take anything away from your current routine. all we're asking you to do is add one thing, and that's conversation. And here's how you do it. Here's how you listen. Here's a sign for you to be vulnerable if you want to be. Is it a beer mat? Is it a sticker in the toilet? It's a sign for you to engage in conversation about your mental health if you feel comfortable to, but not take anything away from what already makes them who they are. And we can get them closer to be able to walk into that group, that Andy's Man Club group, who are the solution, who are doing amazing things. And they feel a lot more comfortable in where they're going and what they're about to say because they've had a platform and a safety net before that.
Yeah, the anxiety part of it is really real. I have obviously done a lot of conversations like this and also privately as well. And even a step further back from, let's say, Andy's Man Club, and you're talking about exercise and ice baths and these sort of things. I spoke to a friend of mine and I said, "Oh, what's your thoughts on exercise?" And he said, "Well, I used to like football, used to like playing football, but I wouldn't be able to go as a single person to a five-side football." He said, I know I would love it the second I get there, but I physically know I can't get there right now." So that's a stage that person would love to go to, and they still can't get there. So the pressure of a group of men talking about their feelings to that individual is probably even further away and even more complex to even consider. So yeah, the more you talk, the more sense you make, Luke. It's definitely a step that's needed. So we're talking about the pub, and we'll get onto your side of things as well. But I would like to touch on another campaign if you are aware of it, which was done with Beavertown Brewery and Calm with the crisp packets. What was your initial thoughts on that concept?
I wasn't aware of this, actually. This is new
Okay.
to me, Lewis.
Amazing. Well, it should tie in quite nicely. Well, I went out for my friend's birthday, and we ordered some Beavertown as a previous London dweller. It's now moved up north, and we were given a free packet of crisps with the beer. And inside the packet, the idea was that you teared it open as a sharer packet, and inside was a number of questions that you could sort of ask as you were eating the crisps together. You were sort of given one pack per 2 pints, I think was the idea, so that you had to share the pack and do the traditional tear open and start to ask those questions. But yeah, it's that again, isn't it? It's putting those questions in a place that those men probably wouldn't ask those questions.
Love that. Yeah, I think that's really, I really align with the way that they've done that and what they've done with it as well. And I think it'll be a lot of our marketing campaigns as well. And this to get through to men, you need to understand that I think the psychology behind men overall, really. And if you ask them those questions as you're giving them the crisps, they're less likely to answer them. But if you allow them the time and space, and the question is there if you want to answer it, and it's their decision whether to answer it or not, you're more likely to get a more positive response, and that question is more likely to go further. And I think that marketing strategy for mental health and men of being there if you need it, there a reminder if you need it, or fading into the background if you don't, is exactly what we need. But we need more saturation of that type of thing. And then it becomes more of a movement. And that's something we really plan to do, to be honest. We've thought about ways that we can access men of being there if you need it. We've sponsored bridges, for example, around the UK before as part of a suicide prevention campaign that we did called Building Bridges. And we sent free suicide prevention packs out to people across the UK and asked them to go and tie a poem called A Cup of Tea, written by a guy based up in the Northwest. And we laminated it, asked them to go and put it on their local motorway or train bridge, just to be there if you need it, because you never know. It's obviously hotspot for suicide. If someone might need to hear that poem about having a cup of tea and letting things all settle down at that point in time. But it's easily ignorable as well. It's not marketing that we're shoving down your throat. It's there if you need it. And I think there's a lot of power in that, especially with such a topic and the kind of drive we need behind it.
Yeah. The idea of it's there if you need it is quite interesting. What about I'm just thinking aloud right now, is that there might be a conversation where they take the mick out of that and they go, look at these stupid questions. And it's like almost becomes a joke, but subconsciously they're still actually talking about it. And maybe 2 or 3 times down the line, it then becomes actually, what are you feeling right now? And it becomes a conversation that way rather than, how do I say this? Crude marketing, essentially. Like, it's all quite depressing almost. It's not super fun. It's a serious topic, but I think when you're talking about it, you should probably look at it from a less serious angle, because you want people to be involved in it, right? You don't want people to not be engaged with it. And the more serious you make it, the more, would you say, almost like alienating your people from it, because it's like, well, that's not me.
Yes. And I think that's why we've had such a genuine human response to what we're doing, because most people have had a drink before in their life. Most people have got towards 2 pints in their life, to be honest.
Yeah.
And most people have felt that feeling that we try and regenerate. And everything that we do and everything we produce, we run rigorously through, and we criticize it. We criticize it. Is it relatable? And is it accessible to everyone? What we're trying to say here. And if it's not, we're not going to put it out there, and we're not going to run that campaign, and we're not going to do it. And I think talking about accessibility, there's a certain level of accessibility in terms of well-being that's not accessible to the masses, and it costs, and a gym membership costs, and a therapist costs, unless you're on a waiting list. And it's just for the people that need it most, and the people that we're losing most. The highest area of suicide in the UK is up in the northeast. Are we putting time and effort and money and stuff into that area to be able to provide solutions that are accessible? My answer right now is no. So in terms of alienation, I feel we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that people don't feel alienated. And this is why 2 Pints Deep was kind of, I think it's really important as a step, because you can make so many more friends after a couple of pints. We've all been in that situation where we're mates with the guy at the bar after a couple of pints. You're like, oh, that guy was nice last night. And that safety net and that buzz is what we're trying to create. What we don't want, and what we will always say, is that alcohol isn't the answer. And no one likes really more than 2-3 pints, because then you're drunk, and no one likes being drunk. We like the run up, really. Yeah. But we need to create that feeling, I think, more of community and relatableness and less alienation. So that would be my answer in terms of alienation.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's mental wellness at the moment seems to be a very privileged role. Like, to have it, you and us having this conversation now, privileged. The option to have a therapist, privileged. The option to talk openly amongst your friends, also very privileged, because you've got to have people that are in the sort of same thought process as you. So let's talk about what you're doing right now. It's sunny outside. Football's being played. What is the current campaign that 2 Pints are running?
Yeah, so it's Men's Health Month this month. Obviously we did a recent campaign about Father's Day, and what dads can do, what dads can't do, the little things based around that. And we had a really good chat in our weekly meeting with the team about that. And this was kind of inspired by one of the guys' conversations that he had with his dads the week before. And that's really how we want to produce our content: real life, real people going for real things. And from that, we really want to create more opportunities in areas that men feel most comfortable. And I think the Euros brings everyone together. It's quite unique in that these international competitions, you can be everyone's mate. Everyone's on the same side for once, which is really nice. So we're trying to use that to our advantage as much as possible. And we have our Euro 2024 beer mat campaign, which we have select pubs across the country that we are giving free beer mats out to. And on those beer mats, there's a few quotes that hopefully will initiate conversation, or at least make people feel like part of a team with mental health as well. So, for example, we've got quotes like, your squad has depth, use it, or win, lose, draw, in it together. Or we've got, think it's all over, it isn't now, in relating to obviously the famous footballing quote. And also one saying, keep your mate for Euro 28. And that vision of like, right, who's around me, that hopefully it, again, marketing there to be ignored. You might choose to be like, oh, that's clever. And then off it goes, your beer's on it. But it might mean something for one person to then have one conversation with one friend that could keep someone here. And I think that there, if you need it, type marketing is really, really important for us. So yeah, we're trying to do a lot of campaigns around the Euros at the moment, and really take advantage of this country being 100% together on something before we go into early next month and everyone is against each other once again in terms of the election.
Yeah, we'll keep it politically free on this on this channel. But yeah, it's really really nice because it's marketing for one person, and it's like you might agree with this or disagree with it, but for me, when I started talking about this, it gave people in my friendship group license to do it, and it's almost like a ripple effect that if you can just get one more person to say XYZ about my feelings or XYZ about this situation, it hopefully creates a bigger ripple that, to go all the way back to your sister's sleepovers, we might start having those more tight-knit conversations about each other and create less surface level relationships, essentially. So yeah, it's a really nice way of doing it, and I really love the last one. I think that's a really nice one, because the more conversations that I have with men, the more I know and hear stories of suicide attempts, suicidal thoughts, these sort of things. And I think suicidal thoughts are a lot more common than are sort of aired and sort of said. We know the big statistics, but I think men particularly go through suicidal thoughts really a lot more regularly than is sort of aired or even considered. So I think that one really will hit really deep. You can tell it's summer because I'm struggling with hay fever. I'm so sorry.
No problem. No, absolutely, it's fine.
So Luke, in your sort of opinion and what you've sort of found so far, what is needed more in the men's space, or what is needed less of? That was a sort of answer to the question before, so I'll ask both.
What is needed more? I think we all have a responsibility, like you said there, and with these beer mats, and I think I can almost relate it back to that the guy that you said, or the situation you said when opening the beer mat, saying, "Oh, those questions are a bit naff." We now have a responsibility in this area, as we have done previously, and we continue to do when we stand up for things that we don't hear that are right in terms of racism and other things. We have a responsibility to stand up and say, "No, I disagree with that. No, I think those questions are all right. No, I'm actually going to tell you that I feel down at the moment." And we have a responsibility and vulnerability, in my view, because it's up to an average of 13 men a day in the UK that we lose now. And until it's someone that we know, it's not a problem that's real. And when it is someone we know, we are trying to do everything we can within our groups to make sure that that prevents anyone else. But that's far too late. And we need to understand that this battle now is a pandemic. We are when we were losing 13 people a day to COVID, everything was going to get shut down, right? So why aren't we reacting in a similar way? And I think we need to be a lot more proactive in our conversations and in our vulnerability, in our emotions. And if you have the strength to speak, because people will follow, as you said earlier. And it's those people that have been in situations that are privileged like ourselves that we can have this conversation, standing up and saying, "I'm going to speak for people here." And it's just so important to start those conversations, I think. So I think we have a responsibility in that, and men need to do more, but we need to do more. We need to be supported. We need to find ways to support everyone. I think we spoke about it earlier, mental well-being be something, I guess, that you can kind of wear as a badge of honor and a bit of pride at the moment, because you can afford it. And we need to make more accessible, I guess, solutions for people that can't. And unfortunately, there is a bad side to social media that can badly affect your mental health, but it's a great way to promote these types of things as well and create conversations and start conversations. And not everyone will agree with them, but unless we create a bit of noise, then I don't think we're going to be able to affect those statistics. And it's something Two Pints Deep really want to do. I think we view ourselves not like a Mind or a Calm in terms of charitable when we go, but kind of a little bit like their rebellious younger brother who will walk the line in terms of their content, who will be a little bit, they've used a bit of terminology that I'm not sure is quite right there. But this whole area and this whole conversation needs shaking up a little bit and making a conversation about the conversation. So yeah, those are the main areas that I'd say.
Yeah, I love that. I've been having this conversation myself recently about like I'm all like it's really like you're sort of torn because you have content going out and you're like, it's great that it's being talked about, and you're like, it is a bit naff, but then your brain goes, well, I'm talking about it being naff. And I think I think this space really does need a disruptor and someone that's willing to, like you say, be the fun little brother or the fun uncle or rebellious sort of side to it. And I think that is really going to start bringing in that other 75% of people that you mentioned right at the beginning that really need this support and really need to start having these conversations. And then what they do after those conversations is their decision. It's just starting with that conversation is the perfect place to start. So in regards to Two Pints Deep, what's next? What's the big vision?
Of course, and this is the $1 million question, right? But we, at the moment, we have exercise clubs, and we have quite a good, I guess, we have two bases in Manchester and London. We want to expand, and we want to expand community based, because the problem with suicide and problem with mental health is different in every community you go to. It's going to be very different in London than it is to up in Sunderland, for example. So we need to address that. As we become charitable, that's going to be a big stage for us in terms of funding, security. I mean, I've just quit my corporate job of 3 years, which is a big risk with no income as we build towards a charity. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. I knew I had to take this leap at some point, but it shows that we're all in on this, and I think it's really important that we are. And then it becomes saturation of the resources that we have, and how far can we get, and who can we reach, but how can we make sure that what we're reaching them with is as accessible as possible. So that's probably the next step. We're looking to work with a lot of hospitality partners on a campaign for beer mats, but more consistently on a monthly basis, to be a more consistent level in those pubs, in those bars, in those spaces, in the football grounds, that type of stuff. Of just it's there if you need it, to have this type of conversation. Be as clever as we can with the marketing to make it relatable, make it funny, so people actually are like, oh, you know what, that's pretty good, and it's a mental health thing, and then that's been brought up in conversation, and it's an opportunity for someone to go, speaking of that. So that's the type of stuff, I guess, that we really want to try and do. And then as we become charitable, we want to really regurgitate the money that we produce or we gain as a charity back into supporting accessibility to those groups that already exist. Yeah, and these man clubs. How can we support getting people from where they're at now, from us to them? But also, if there's areas and if we find communities that are really struggling and like, I tell you what, we'd love a five-a-side pitch, or we'd love access to this, but we just can't afford to pay it. How can we then support those groups and support providing more safe spaces for men within communities that are, I guess, before that counselling and that solution? How can we help them have a level and have a safe space to go to? So yeah, that's the master plan.
Amazing, love it. I'm really excited to see what the future holds. Like I said, I was pretty much I think you're a few months in when it sort of popped up, and I was like, that's cool, and it led me on my journey. And if I can say anything, that initial talking has led me to where I am now, which you either love or hate. Personally, I love it because I feel like I'm in a good position. So, and it all started with talking about it. So I completely am on board with you, and yeah, I think more men should be talking. If people love what they've heard and they want to find out more and get involved with Two Pints Deep, where's the best place to find you and Two Pints Deep?
Of course. So we've just launched our new website, which is really exciting. So head over there for all the information on, I guess, my story, what we're about, what our aims are. So that's www.twopintsdeep.com. And then we have probably our main following at the moment is on Instagram, and that's a lot of where our content goes through. You'll be able to see on there links to our new TikTok as well. We're on that platform as much as I didn't want to be, just to document, I guess, the journey of myself and the journey of what Two Pints Deep is. And people are quite interested in those videos, and there was a hunger for it. So we are doing it, and it helps us get our name out there. It's a brilliant platform to be able to do that and boost the videos. So we're 3 episodes into Two Pints Deep, My Journey, which is a mini series. So yeah, if people want to have a look on there as well and support the campaign through there, we'll be going through all my different vulnerabilities, what I've been through in terms of loss, anxiety, depression, gambling, and we'll be deep diving into those in the videos as well. And it'll be a complete open book of where I am and why I am where I am today.
Amazing. Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm sure there'll be something else in the future that we end up doing together, but at least a part 2. Luke, thank you so much for your time today. It's greatly appreciated.
Legend. Thanks, Lewis. Appreciate it.